What's up, everybody? It's another episode of perhaps the greatest codcast in the world. It's the Infinity Edge codcast, brought to you by the esportsdepartment.com. I'm all jacked up on espresso right now. I just figured out how to use the espresso machine in the office, and that is going to be a bad thing for everyone. I'm already pretty annoying in the office. I'm going to be insufferable. But enough about the espresso. I think we should talk about some League of Legends. Do you guys want to talk about League of Legends?
Let's do it.
Sure, we got 5 playoff games that are going to be happening across the LEC and LCS.
Well, you can't just say that. I didn't say I'm with Alan 1 and Alan 2 Ghost in the Hef yet. I was just asking like a simple yes or no question, and you just tried to steal the intro away from
codcast meta.
Yeah. There's an order to these things.
Well, if you're so energetic, get on it. Let's go.
The podcast is very similar to a well-pulled shot of espresso. There's an order to things. You need to have everything lined up correctly, and then when you click the button, it's all good to go. So, as per usual, I'm joined by Alan 1 and Alan 2 Ghost in the Hef. Boys, free episode. What's going on? How you feeling? And then we're going to say, oh yeah, we're feeling good. Let's get in the slate, and then that's what you do.
Oh yeah, that is the order of things. I'm doing great. Let's get into the slate.
Oh yeah, I knew it.
Same here, yeah. LEC, let's do it. Over in Europe, our first game for Friday going to be Fnatic versus SK Gaming. This one's going to be a wild one. There's probably going to be a lot of kills if Fnatic loses because they like to kill themselves in League of Legends. So Alan, we'll start with you on this one. Fnatic versus SK. Who do you see moving on in the losers bracket?
I think I see Fnatic moving on. This game is so confusing to me from like how do I bet it or play DraftKings on it, because everything I know about the history of the LEC and the history of these players says Fnatic probably wins this 3-0. But if you look at this year's stats and numbers and all of those things, it definitely says that SK is valuable at their like plus 400 number or whatever it is. I do think that like Fnatic has lost enough to themselves so far this year that I could see this series like starting to get a little bit bloody and starting, SK could take a game or two because they are very good in those situations where teams overfight them in late game situations and they have scaled up. So I think that SK could get a game or two here, and that will probably make them a somewhat interesting play, at least on the first slate, because you just have a G2 game, which I seriously doubt anyone's taking Schalke in that game. And then you have Fnatic, which is another team that people love to play. So I think that playing a little bit of SK on at least the first slate makes some sense. Maybe mixing them in like in 4-2-1s or something like that, where you have 4 G2s, 2 Fnatic, and 1 SK. I would see this as the much more likely upset over the two. I mean, at this point, you know the players on these teams. Like Fnatic's players are much better than SK's players. And have done a lot more in the history of League of Legends. So I think they probably just win here most of the time, but there is that little part of me that looks at what they've done this season, losing to themselves so often, that I do want to get involved with SK a little bit.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on Fnatic versus SK.
Yeah, so this is a classic free roll situation. I think that if you play SK Gaming, you're basically lighting your money on fire. However, Fnatic does have Yamato Cannon as their coach and Niski is their mid laner. So would I enjoy watching them lose and just crashing out of the playoffs? Yes, a lot. It would probably be the most amazing thing that's ever happened in League of Legends. Watching Yamato Cannon just like commentate the rest of the playoffs would be hilarious. And they would talk to him as if he was good at it, and then they'd be like, "Okay, now go back and coach Fnatic and lose again in the summer." But in all seriousness, I agree with most of what Alan said. I mean, Bwipo is better than Gen X. I think we can all agree on that one. Selfmade is better than Tinks right now. Tinks does have big upside and is a very good player, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to overcome the entire Fnatic roster. Nisqy against Blue, I think long term, is there a chance that Blue is better than Nisqy was at their peak? Potentially, but we haven't seen enough to think that it's going to happen in this series. And Nisqy, assuming they play like Nisqy champions and Fnatic actually drafts like not even well, just like not the worst drafts in the world, should be able to at least go even in lane. One potential problem would be if they drafted a lot of early and mid game champions for Nisqy, played a lot of stuff like Galio, and we're just trying to snowball the game early on and failed, and then like got outscaled. Maybe that's the route that SK tries to go. I think that's definitely the best like game plan for SK is picking a lot of extra scaling champions, forcing Fnatic to make the moves in the early game, and then just hope that a lot of them fail. With that being said, being the passive side of things is really difficult as well. Like it's not easy to play disciplined League of Legends. When I like, it's funny for the Yale team, like they all talk about the game like passive players, but they play the game like aggressive players. And a lot of the times in our games, we just lose the plot in the early and mid game, where we're just making plays that don't really make a lot of sense with the champions that we have. And you see it a lot with professional teams as well, even though they're better. In the bot lane, Upset and Hillsong against Jesu and Treats, I think that Hillsong and Upset are much better. The interesting thing here is I think that the best junglers in the world, in my opinion, aren't necessarily the ones who are like flashy, getting a ton of kills. It's more about the manipulation of the macro game and your jungle pathing and all of those kinds of things. I think Tinks has shown that he really understands that side of the game, which could keep these games relatively close and low scoring, assuming that Fnatic is the aggressor and SK can play slow enough. What does that mean for DraftKings? It doesn't mean much to me, honestly, because if you're going to play as much Fnatic as I would plan on playing, you need to get exposure to all of the outcomes, really. So you're going to have just a ton of combinations of Fnatic. Like, I don't know what the max is going to be if they have some kind of combined slates over the weekend, but I would think that you can get 50, 60 unique iterations of Fnatic with the other favorites and still have pretty good lineups. So I really do want Fnatic to lose. It would be the best thing ever. I just don't see it happening. That's really it. It sucks. It sucks. Like, I'd love to have competitive matches in the playoffs, but Fnatic shouldn't be a fifth. They're the fifth seed, right? They shouldn't be the fifth seed. It's just the way that their season kind of panned out. They played like garbage for a lot of it, but they're still, like Alan said, a lot better.
Yeah. I was just pulling up real quick to look at some of the like statistical things behind these two teams. Like Fnatic still is just outspending in gold SK by a significant margin, even though their records are pretty close. The only thing that, like, SK has one of the worst early games in the league, but then they are one of the best teams at those mid to late situations, which I think are actually less repeatable anyway. But I think that if Fnatic were to, throw the game away a couple times in those situations, I do think that, like, they've played team fights well enough, SK, to win from that kind of game. And especially if you see Tinks get Hecarim at all in this series, I would probably just live bet that on a map, because you're probably going to get plus 300 or something like that. And I think that that's probably the best situation for SK to win a game or two.
Yeah. The one thing I'd be careful with those statistics specifically, like you would agree that SK and Fnatic are fundamentally different in how they approach the early and mid game, right? Like, not even just like what their stats say, but also like how they actually play the game.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is, and I don't know if this is 100% true or if it would be borne out in the statistics, but if you're a team like SK who's not looking to be aggressive in the early game, there's going to be a lower amount of gold in the game. The less number of interactions with the enemy team, whether or not they go in your favor or not. Also, they're just less gold. They're just less gold. And I think basically what that means to me is, as time goes on, in the game. If you're playing a slow, conservative game and the game is close, then SK's numbers are going to be a lot better. So as the game goes on, as long as they're not getting blown out at the 30-minute mark, 40-minute mark, it's going to look a lot closer, and their numbers are going to reflect that. In the early and mid game, if they're playing a lot of these slower games, maybe they're having a negative impact on the amount of available gold to Fnatic in the early and mid game. So then it would also like drag Fnatic down a little bit. I know that the stats are significant over the larger sample size, but when we're trying to compare two teams to one another, I'd be careful with that specifically. So I don't know if anybody has a like percentage of like a gold spent percentage per match, because if Fnatic played a slower game with SK, I would still expect them to have maybe even a slight advantage in terms of gold spent, but I wouldn't expect like that number to be the thing that holds true. And I don't know, I could easily be proven wrong on that, and I'd be interested to hear like how to parse that out of the data, but I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it would be a very interesting question, but not something that I know. Yeah,
it would be like in baseball if you said, you know, this team is the best home run hitting team in the major leagues. That's assuming that everyone goes up to the plate trying to hit a home run every single time. Now, some players actually do that, and often they'll have very high strikeout numbers, but not every team is trying to do that. Like old school Texas Rangers, when they were pretty good, they were trying to play like small ball and stuff like that. And it's like, just even if it's not the optimal way to play, I think most people agree nowadays that the expected runs of a team that just literally swings for the fences is going to do better in the long run. But I think that's kind of the next level for League of Legends, is understanding what the difference is between the play styles and how that impacts their statistics.
All right. We'll move on to Saturday's game. We have G2 Esports going up against Schalke 04. At the time of recording, we only have one slate up here. It's a 2-gamer for the LEC. It's Fnatic SK G2 SO4. So this slate kind of in general seems pretty chalky if you go G2 Fnatic or you take your shot on SK. But Michael, maybe you have a different opinion here. Would you play any Schalke on this 2-gamer going up against G2?
No. 0% chance. The only reason you would do it is if you think that it's a 5-game series and the underdog has a chance to be bloody, like what LGD has been doing recently. Like they've had 2 losses, or 1 or 2 losses over the past couple of days, where they had like 20 kills or something. Like that doesn't generally happen in League of Legends. So when you look at a team like Schalke against G2, Schalke's playstyle isn't even beneficial for DraftKings scoring, even against a team like G2. Now, did Schalke beat G2 this split?
they did. Yeah, one time they beat both Rogue and G2 this split.
How many kills do they have in that game? Do you have that in front of you?
I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, so I'll just go lane by lane then while we're waiting for that. So Wonder's a better player than Broken Blade. Broken Blade is a good player, can play carry matchups, can play things like Jace, Lucian, Gnar, and like kind of build up a lead in lane. But I think they're probably not going to introduce the variance of a carry versus carry matchup in the top lane. Jankos against Gilius, very similar players in my opinion. Jankos is just a better version of Gilius, so obviously I like Jankos more. Caps against Abadage. I know a lot of people like Abadage. Personally, I don't see it as him as good as a lot of other players are. The interesting thing is that I think Abadage and Caps have a lot of similar champions in their champion pool. We're seeing a lot more Ryze, like we saw Rookie go off on Ryze today in China. I think that it's really good. This is the perfect meta for Caps. And if it's the perfect meta for Caps, sure, Abadage can play a lot of those champions, but he doesn't have the same playmaking upside that Caps does. So that it's a bigger advantage for Caps than Abadage, even though it does benefit all mid laners when we have these kind of ridiculous champions that are viable. Reckless and Mickey, much better than Neon and Limit. I don't see a way for Schalke to win this match. I do think that Dylan Falco is a good coach. He does try to take items and like the draft into consideration when he's building out a game plan, and I would love to see it actually come to fruition. But I think that the talent discrepancy between the two teams is too large for it really to make that large of an impact. So that's really how I see this slate would be play the favorites. I'd rather play the favorites, lose, and watch exciting League of Legends than like try to get cute, play a bunch of Schalke and SK, and then just lose all my money while watching blowouts. Like, that would be the worst thing ever.
Yeah, so the lone Schalke win over G2 was a 13-7, so very low scoring too.
So, I mean, I don't remember how the game exactly went, but what I would assume happened is Schalke got some kind of early game lead, and they just didn't allow G2 to fight them over every single objective. And I think that game probably ended early too, right?
It did end early, and they played Twisted Fate, so it became, that kind of sideline stuff. Yeah, Twisted Fate and Aatrox, so very sideline focused. Yeah, I don't have anything else to really add here. I mean, G2 is, I think, going to win 3-0. The only reason they wouldn't win 3-0 to me is because they have the safety of the losers bracket. Like last year, I got in deep shit with G2 against Mad Lions because I made a sizable bet on that, and then realized that G2 didn't care that much on the day. But this is my second biggest bet of the week, is on the -2.5 for G2, because it opened at plus 120, which I think is pretty crazy, because I do think that in a motivation, everything being equal, I think that G2 wins 3-0 70% of the time here. So I think G2 is the only play here. I would like to play most of my lineups as 4 stacks of G2. I think that 3-0s are just generally better for this kind of slate usually, unless there's very high kill scores on the loss for the favorite. So if Fnatic wins 3-1 and they have a high kill score on the one loss, then Fnatic could be the better team. But I would rather play the G2 side of this for sure. And so that's why I'm opening it up to playing maybe one-offs with SK, just to get G2 captains that you can't get otherwise. Because I was looking at the LCS slate, and it wasn't even the chalkiest construction that won the 2-gamer LCS last weekend, and it got split 25 ways. It was, you got $300 for first place. So, I mean, that's what, 20 lineups. So I think here I just play 5-ish lineups of different looking constructions. Maybe one Fnatic 4-stack with the 3 on G2. Because if you play the Wonder Captain tomorrow with a 4 G2 with 3 Fnatic, you're gonna split. If that wins, you're gonna split with 30 plus people. So it's if you just want to put that lineup only into the GPP, I don't hate that. But if you're going to play multiple lineups, I think looking for constructions that have high upside, if SK were to pull a game off, is the only way that I can see to play this upcoming slate, besides playing cash and that kind of stuff, because some people will convince themselves to play something weird in cash tomorrow. I guarantee it.
All right. We'll move right on to our third match of the LEC on Sunday. We have Rogue versus Mad Lions. Sadly, this one isn't on a slate yet. This seems like the one where the underdog could have a chance, but we'll talk about it anyway. Alan, Rogue versus Mad Lions, what do you like here?
I really like Rogue to play in DFS. I wish that we did have a 3-game slate with them. I hope that we get that. Maybe they end up putting the G2 game on multiple slates and then play Rogue with the LCS or something like that. But I really, really like Rogue on this kind of slate, because I think that people would convince themselves to play quite a bit of Mad Lions because of the anti-chalk narrative, and especially after tomorrow, where it's going to be a chalk fest. You're going to see G2 players, owned in the 70% range. So I think coming off of that kind of slate, people are going to want to play an underdog, and they're going to believe in Mad Lions. And I see this exactly the same way as I see TSM Evil Geniuses that we'll get to a little bit later. Like, there's one, except Rogue is just better than TSM at like getting leads in the early game too, whereas TSM has to wait for those scaling compositions. But I think like the volatile playstyle of Mad Lions is like very good against Fnatic G2. Like, I would get excited about them in less important matches there. Like, if Mad Lions played G2 in the first round and G2 still had the losers bracket there, then I could see wanting to play like game stacks and that kind of stuff. But here, I really think that Rogue is the play in DFS. I think the betting line is crazy. Mad Lions is way too talented to be like plus 400 or something like that. But I still wouldn't want to bet it, to be honest. Like, I just believe that Rogue is the much more consistent team who's going to get early advantages most of the time here and snowball those out and then win when they're scaled up. So I think it could be a really, really good slate to play Rogue on if you get a slate that has more than 2 games on it. If you get a slate that has 2 games on it, you're kind of screwed no matter what. Like, those kind of slates can be just really hard to find profitable ways to play without making constructions that are not the typical kind of construction I make.
All right. Looks like Alan thinks Rogue wins this more than not. So, Michael, we'll go to you. Maybe you have a little different opinion on the Mad Lions. How do you see this one shaping out?
It's definitely a spot where I like the idea of the Mad Lions. They lost both their matches to Rogue. So in the first one, it was a 29-minute game, 18-5. Rogue won. They had Renekton against Gragas, which is a 50-50 matchup. They had Jarvan against Kindred, which is pretty interesting. You don't see that very often. I like the idea behind it. Gragas Kindred is pretty cool because like if when you use Kindred Ultimate, you can use Gragas Ultimate to get rid of people. That's pretty fun. But Kindred was not like a top tier jungler at that point in the game, so I don't know exactly like why they did it that way. Maybe they thought it was extremely strong, but like I don't have an issue with the pick. It's just I don't think that it's optimal, an optimal way to draft, and I'd be surprised if they played it in the match this weekend. Larson against Humanoid was Azir against Syndra, pretty generic, and then we had Kai'Sa Alistair against Xayah Leona, which that means that Mad Lions got the Xayah Leona as a response to the Kai'Sa pick, so they should have had the advantage in the bot lane. They weren't able to use that advantage, which is it's not shocking to me because Rogue is a very good team. Then I'll just try to find the second one. But the other thing that I was going to say is I bet they have a 4-game slate for this on Saturday, Sunday. They might do both LEC matches and both LCS matches. That'd be really cool.
God, I hope so.
They do that.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. The second time they played, it was 17-10. Rogue beat Mad Lions. Aatrox against Sion. It's a 50-50. No real winning chances in lane for either one without like outside help. Udyr against Lilia. This is the kind of matchup that I like the Udyr side because you have the potential to overwhelm the enemy team just by being like a juggernaut style champion, literally running over the enemy team as like a tanky jungler. Then we had Orianna against Ahri. I hate Ahri right now. I understand why people like to play it, but it really does a lot to mess up your damage profile for your team. I think that we talked about this last week. They had Sion, who does damage but is not a damage dealer. Lilia, who does damage but is not a damage dealer. It's a burst champion. Ahri does damage. It's a burst damage champion. You have to get picks and stuff, snowball the early and mid game. Then they had Jhin. Everybody knows how I feel about Jhin. And then they had Nautilus, and Nautilus isn't supposed to do damage in that team comp. So I just think that they drafted themselves into a bad spot right there. I don't know if it's a systemic problem where the coaching just doesn't draft well often because last year they had a lot of good games and a lot of good drafts. I want Mad Lions to win, but I think that it's just going to like distort my perception of the matchup. So that scares me a little bit about how much I want to play Mad Lions. I think in terms of talent, I mean, Ottawamne and Armut are probably pretty similar. I think Ottawamne's had a great career. Who knows if Armut's going to be able to to pull that off. And even if you have a very high opinion of Armut, if he ended up being Adewamne, it's not a bad thing. Inspired's definitely better than Elyoya. I think Elyoya, a lot of people like him. I genuinely think that he's a downgrade from Shadow from last year. This would have been a great meta for Shadow. But, we'll just never know. Larson's better than Humanoid. I think that Humanoid's had a pretty down year, but still a pretty good player. If Mad Lions won and Humanoid had a good series, I wouldn't be surprised. Hansama and Trimby against Karzi and Kaiser, I think that's an even matchup. And it would be the easiest way for Mad Lions to win is to play through bot lane with Karzi just going insane. But Karzi and Hansama are both very volatile players. They both will go for the aggressive play, which is one of the reasons why I like both of them a lot. I just don't know if you can really depend on Karzi Kaiser 50-50ing 3 times and winning the coin flip, winning 3 out of 5 of those coin flips in a game in the laning phase. So I want to play Mad Lions. I probably will end up playing Mad Lions depending on what the slate looks like. But it kind of seems like a trap. It just doesn't feel good, in my opinion. As much as I want to do it, like I'm already second guessing myself, and they haven't even released the contest yet. So that's never a good sign.
Yeah.
One for you to think over there a bit.
Yeah.
I think that this game, if there is a 4-game slate like that, this game is a very explosive and good one for DFS purposes. Like the kill scores will probably be pretty high because of the way that Mad Lions plays, and I think that Rogue is willing to play that way if other teams come into them like that.
I hope so.
All right. Ready to move on to the LCS?
Let's do it.
Moving on to the best region in the world. The winner's bracket already figured itself out. Cloud9 took a 3-0 victory over 100 Thieves, moving on to round 2. And Team Liquid took on TSM, got a 3-1 finish to move on to their second round against Cloud9. But we have to deal out the loser's bracket. Do you guys have any thoughts on how the first set of matches went?
Got a lot of thoughts on that.
To expectation for me.
I'll give you quick thoughts there.
TSM should have won the first game and the third game probably, or the first game and the fourth game. No, not the fourth game. The fourth game was the Rumble game. They should have been up 2-1 going into the fourth game. It was insane that they gave up that lead in that game. And if you look at the decision making around Baron when they were just kind of sitting there for a little while, that's always when bad stuff is going to start happening. And what team did that today? Nongshim did it today against KT. They just walked into a choke point, got hit by a 4-man Orianna ultimate, then got four players hit by an Aatrox. Oh my god, it just absolutely blew my mind. Because KT threw away the game and then Nongshim threw away the game right after. just an insane matchup. But I think the other problem was that TSM drafted really poorly in game 4. Picking Lucian into Gangplank, and then picking Rumble, putting Lucian mid, and then putting the Rumble into Gangplank. I have no idea what they were thinking with that. I understand that Huni is good at playing Rumble, but just a wild decision. Makes absolutely no sense to me. You can't expect to win that lane matchup, and then if it gets any jungle attention from Team Liquid, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. Give Gangplank a free lane. He's going to scale out of control, and that's exactly what happened. There was that one barrel combo that took away 80% of Lost's health during a late game dragon fight. I mean, it was mind blowing to me, and that's what's really frustrating about League of Legends when you're watching it is the difference between a good game and a bad game is how 1 or 2 of these things happens in the laning phase. And I think that TSM, could they have won with those compositions? Maybe, but probably not often, under 20% for sure, the game 4 draft. But I felt kind of justified in my opinion from last week. I do think that TSM had good chances to win. And after the first games played out, I was like, wow, they are just very closely talented. they messed up game 1, messed up game 4, but they can compete with Team Liquid. So that's a good thing for TSM fans, I think, even though it's frustrating to watch them lose in that fashion.
All right, Alan, any thoughts on the winners bracket?
I mean, I actually kind of generally agree. I thought that TSM was better than I expected in that series. I mean, I do think that that's like the difference between the best teams and the second best teams a lot of the time. Like, they don't throw games like that. But
consistency, yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that like TSM played pretty good, and that will probably lead us into the next game pretty well here.
Yep. To start us off, we have TSM versus Evil Geniuses starting on Saturday. We already talked a bit about the winners bracket, so we'll hop right into this one. Michael, what are your thoughts on TSM versus EG? Who's pulling this one out?
So I'll just do a lane by lane. They don't have Evil Genius's roster in front of me. Okay, Huni and Impact. All right. After that first match, people are going to have a very low opinion of Huni. I think that Huni is just as good as Impact. His career is very similar in terms of like they've been talented for a very long time. Impact's playstyle, playing for the team, being on better teams than Huni for the past like 7 years, something like that. It gives people the perception that Impact is a much better player than Huni, and I don't think that's the case at all. Huni's more likely to make stupid decisions, especially like in the draft. If he has any influence on the draft, I could see them pulling out Rumble again and just it falling flat on their face. But a lot of that comes down to the coaching as well. I think if properly coached and like had his talent channeled the right way, I think that Huni would still be one of the 3 or 4 best top laners in the West, let alone North America. But it's probably not possible at this point for that to be like a consistent fact. Like Huni playing at that level, he's just too streaky. Spica against Svenskeren. I think that Spica's upside is better than Svenskeren. Career-wise, obviously Svenskeren's put together a very strong career, playing on a lot of good teams in Europe and the LCS. Good player in general. Don't really have any issues there. I think Power of Evil is much better than Jizuke. I'm a big Jizuke supporter. I like him a lot. I think that he's a fun player to watch. He's kind of like it's the opposite of the Impact Huni matchup. Like Power of Evil is a more consistent one, plays the control mages more often, just has like that one champion that you can never give him in Orianna, and that helps warp drafts. We even saw Team Liquid pick it away just so that he didn't get it. And then Jizuke, like he could play anything. The Rise coming back into style is interesting. I'm sure he can still play Echo. Echo's still a strong champion. We might see a Kassadin or something like that if we get a blind Azir from TSM. That would be a pretty cool thing to watch. If Evil Genius is his blue side and they ban out Azir, or no, they ban out Orianna, they might be able to trick TSM into playing Azir and then getting a Kassadin game. That'd be a lot of fun to watch. Not sure if they would do that, but I would like to see it. And then definitely an Ignar against Lost and Sword Art. I think this is very close. I like Ignar a lot. I like Sword Art a lot. I think that a lot of AD carries are just replaceable at this point. They don't really do anything special. They play conservative and try to get into the later part of the game. That's what separates players like Deftly and Lost and Tactical, these players, away from like Karzi and Hansama. Like that's the difference for me, is the players who are willing to go out and make ridiculous plays. Because when you need to have that play happen, there's only a certain type of player who's willing to take the burden of winning on their shoulders. And that's another thing that we talk about with our players, which is maybe corny's not the right word, but like it's somewhat of a platitude, but it's true. You need players who are willing to be blamed if they lose the game. And Lost and Deathly are just not it. So it's a close match. If Evil Genius is won by split pushing, I would not be surprised. If TSM won just by Power of Evil diffing, that wouldn't surprise me either. If I had to bet on the match, I would definitely side with TSM. Because yes, they lost the series against Team Liquid, but I think they showed a lot in terms of their ability to play at a high level in the playoff environment, and I think that'll benefit them in the long run.
All right, we'll kick it over to you, Alan. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think Michael covered him pretty well. I think that Power of Evil is like a lot better than Jizuke. I mean, that's basically what he said, and he was saying how much he likes Jizuke. I don't even really like Jizuke, so it's very easy for me. I think that is a pretty clear advantage for TSM, and I think that the way that a mid lane difference plays itself out over a 5 game series like this is like pretty obvious, and I do think that TSM is a bigger favorite than their odds say. I have some pretty heavy bets on TSM, not quite as heavy as TL last week, but right in that range. So I really believe in TSM here. I think that they could score great for DFS purposes because Evil Geniuses is just a high death per loss team. They have high combined kills per minute. They try to make stuff happen even from positions behind. Now, sometimes trying to make stuff happen means they're in split pushing situations where there's like less kill participation, but I think over a 5 game series, it becomes bloody enough anyway. So I think that there's a chance that TSM wins 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, and in any of those situations, I could see them being one of the higher scoring teams on the slate. So I hope that we get a 4 game slate here, and I will probably just only play TSM and fade Evil Geniuses entirely. I actually really like what Michael was saying about the top lane matchup. I think a lot of people are going to look at that and say this is a huge spot for Evil Geniuses. I think that Alfari is a much better player than Impact at this point in their careers, and Huni stood up fine to Alfari. Now, there were a couple games where he got his ass camped, and like, what can you do there, really? And like, why are you telling your coach that you should play Rumble when you don't have a single front line and your 80 carries playing like Aphelios or something? That game was just like a throw in the draft stage, and I'm guessing that Huni said he wanted to play Rumble. That would be my read on the situation. But like, as long as his coach is like, hey, we're not doing that, I think that, you know, he'll stand out fine to Impact. I really believe that, because he played pretty well in that series, and I was expecting him to be a problem for TSM. So it would be all TSM for me here, especially if we get that 4 game slate that we're talking about.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is, like, the Huni versus Impact thing, it reminds me a lot of like the Shy debate, where people say, oh, he's not that good, he runs it down all the time, he just ints. And the performance out of the Shy today, when he had like a 13 kill Lucian game, how many top laners do you know that can do that? Like, they just don't exist. His mechanics are out of control. Like, at the end of the game, when he basically got like 2 kills when he had 200 health or something, like, obviously it does depend on the other team being far behind and not maybe having the best mechanics, but the Shy is just like on another level. The guy is amazing. Like, that's what I can envision Huni being again. Impact at his best was never really that like highly skilled mechanical player, which isn't trying to take anything away from Impact. He plays the weak side of the map incredibly well, and he plays tanks really well. He even played Renekton really well this split when he had to play on that style of champion. I'm not trying to take anything away from Impact, but he's a much more consistent player. He's been on better teams, and like, Huni's more volatile, and I like the volatility. I embrace the volatility. A lot of people shy away from it, the Shy, but that's just the difference of style. Like, I'm not going to tell someone they're wrong for liking Impact more. It's just we don't value the same things.
And a lot of people will like talk about Impact's season this year as if he was like playing a lot of carries, and like Renekton and Aatrox aren't carries exactly. Like, they're like flanking team fight champions more than anything else, is how I personally think of them. Like, he could definitely play that style of champion, but if you were like, who's going to play Lucian top, who's going to play Quinn as a counter pick in this, it's Huni 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, you can carry a game as Renekton and Aatrox, but they're not carry champions. They're not like, it's not like you're putting Fiora in the top lane. Like, definitely. Camille, same thing with like Renekton and Aatrox. Can they carry a game? Yes. Are they carry champions built specifically to carry a game? No.
Okay. moving on to Sunday, our final game in the LCS to wrap up round 1. We have 100 Thieves versus Dignitas. This one is pretty interesting to me because it seems to be dividing a lot of people. I know John is heavily still on the 100 Thieves train, hates Dignitas.
Oh my god. What?
And I know a lot of people are still questioning Ryoma in the mid lane.
He's fucking horrible. What's there to question? He's bad. He's bad at League of Legends.
The problem
Next
is
question.
the problem is Saligo was sitting behind him on a team up until last year, so I don't know if there's
but that's because Papa Smithy was like, oh, we're gonna get Ryoma over here from the OCE because the OCE is so good, and then it's like, okay, well, he was bad, and then you got rid of him and started playing Damonte, and now you go back to Ryoma. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Oh, it's gonna be a fiery game.
See, this is how I know what I'm talking about. Because I couldn't get through my intro without you guys going into it. So very divisive. Whatever.
Decisive and divisive.
Yes. I was watching the Crackdown a little bit, and they had the former LNG coach on there, and they brought up Ryoma and asked him if he would even consider starting him over Damonte, and he just flat out said no.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's insane. I don't know any other way to say it.
So we'll hop right into it now. 100 Thieves versus Dignitas. Alan, kick us off here. What's going to happen in this match?
I think that 100 Thieves is going to win, and probably pretty decisively would be my guess. I think, like, if you really look at the talent on these two teams, you have to end up with 100 Thieves as the better team, personally. Like, if you look at Someday versus Fake God, you got to pick Someday. You go Closer versus Dardoch. Now I could see some argument there, right? Like that similar style of carry player who needs his team to back him up or he's going to look terrible. Then mid laner, we have the Saligo Ryoma 100 Thieves grudge match. I think that didn't Ryoma get replaced by Saligo last year a couple times, and then they came back. It was just like back and forth between those two. Here's the deal: they're both like bottom 5 LCS mid laners. I don't know. Like, I'm not really excited about either of them. Saligo has looked okay this year. I think that's mostly due to following whatever Dardoch tells him to do. Which, you know, if you like that angle, you could do it in this game. But I just don't. I don't see it because Dignitas has basically won their games by letting the other teams come into them. They have never had an early game lead, it feels like. And then they just sort of out team fight because Afromoo and Neo have played late game team fights really well. I don't think that Afromoo and Neo probably get through the lane phase very well here. I believe that FBI and Huhi are still very good. They seem to like get push and get solo kills a lot more often for me, so I could see that happening in this game. And it's just hard for me to point to a place where I'm like, Dignitas definitely has the edge here. Besides being like 100 Thieves' brains are broken, which might be an angle. I mean, they could be on mental boom. Like, they have lost so much since getting the smoke blown up their butt at the beginning of the year. But I think at some point the talent wins out here, and I think I would rather play 100 Thieves. But I don't think that angle is like going to be particularly unpopular. I think that the Dignitas angle is actually probably going to be more unpopular on the slate. Like, if we get a 4-game slate, we could see Dignitas at like 10%. And in that case, then I would want a little exposure to Dignitas because of what I said. Like, I could see 100 Thieves just being out on the season. Like, we switched into Ryoma, and we're done playing for this season. But otherwise, I think it's 100 Thieves or nothing.
All right, Michael, I know you've been waiting there. Let us know how this one's going to turn out. 100 Thieves versus Dignitas.
Yeah, so 100 Thieves has a 2-0 record against Dignitas in the regular season. Guess how many wins Ryoma has against Dignitas in the regular season?
I'm gonna go with 0. By the way that
Yeah,
you're
that's gonna
saying
be a
this.
0. That's gonna be a 0. How many wins does Ryoma have against a top 6 or 7 team in the LCS this split?
Oh, I see. It feels like 1 or 0.
It's 0.
Yeah.
Since Ryoma came onto the squad, they lost to Evil Geniuses. They lost to TSM. They beat Golden Guardians. Wow, impressive. They beat Immortals. Wow, impressive. And they beat FlyQuest. Wow, impressive. And then they lost to Team Liquid, and they lost 3 games to C9. Obviously, like, yes, Team Liquid's very good. C9's very good. You can't really blame them for losing those matches. And I'm kind of joking, but Ryoma is not a good player. I understand that if they had a style, like a reason stylistically to go from Damonte to Ryoma, which seems to be the case. They like having Ryoma on like more of the just traditional mid lane champions, and Damonte was more of like a split pusher, wanted to play TF and Galio. This would be perfect time for Damonte. I think Galio is really strong right now. I think it's a mistake that he's not on the team because it also puts a lot of stress on the draft. When you're playing with a player like Ryoma, you know his champion pool is basically going to be most of the generic champions. He also plays Silas, but that's not going to be a gigantic difference maker in most of these matches. I think that it gives up a lot of their opportunities to like win the game through macro, because if you had Damonte on some of these like specifically Galio, if you put Damonte on Galio against Dignitas, it takes away a lot of what Dignitas is good at. It would take even more it would put even more pressure on them in the early and mid game, and then they'd have the game would be closer. They'd have a better chance of winning the mid game team fight, snowballing that into a late game advantage. The fact that 100 Thieves has a talented roster, I think it's kind of overblown at this point, because yes, I do agree. Someday is better than Fake God. Someday is a very good player, has been a very good player for a long time. Closer against Dardoch, pretty similar. People like when players come from other regions. Dardoch has been a toxic human for the past like his entire life, really. So people just hate him. If people didn't hate him so much, they would realize how good of a player he is. Ryoma against Soligo. Soligo is a better player than Soligo is a better player than Ryoma. I understand that he was behind him previously, but I think that as time goes on, it'll be clear that Soligo is better. And neither of them are very good, so it's like splitting hairs, but I just think that Soligo is better. Neo and Aframu against FBI and Huhi. I do think that FBI is better than Neo, but Aframu is better than Huhi. Aframu has a much more experience as a support player. When they were on the same team, Aframu eventually, I think, helped get Huhi kicked off the team when they were the mid laner. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Huhi in the transition to support, because he's done a very good job, and it is pretty impressive that he's been able to pick up a second role and be successful. But a lot of their success when they were going from the Golden Guardians to 100 Thieves was built around their playstyle, and that playstyle is like basically gone. So now you're a bunch of like league average, maybe a little better than the league average in certain spots, players playing generic League of Legends against a team that probably has the playstyle advantage over you, because Dignitas is definitely the more cerebral team at this point, I think. Closer is more. I don't think of Closer as like a cerebral player. He's more of like I'm going to win in the early and mid game and then snowball out of control. Dignitas will try to play that other play style, which could throw a wrench into 100 Thieves' plans. So I just think that Dignitas, they've had a better season. And this is kind of what we talked about from the beginning of the season. Didn't we say that 100 Thieves is going to be like a team that everybody liked a lot? They were going to underperform throughout the season, and then they're going to get the playoffs and lose. That's been my idea the whole time. So I can't go away from that. I didn't expect Dignitas to perform as well as they did this split. But I think even before the season started, we said if Fake God has a good split, if Dardoch can play well, if Aframu can keep everybody in line, they're going to be able to do something this year. I need to plug in my laptop. But that's basically all I think about that match. I do think Dignitas wins, and I'm surprised that everybody's so heavy on 100 Thieves.
Yeah, so the last thing I'll say is if you see 100 Thieves drafting like late game scaling compositions, abandon ship in whatever way you can. So if 100 Thieves isn't going for early game focused like top side play, just live bet Dignitas, hedge all of your DFS lineups, I probably end up like not playing very much of this game because I feel like I have a bad read on it. It probably ends up like one or two lineups with each of the teams in a 4-game slate. But if you see 100 Thieves trying to play late game scaling compositions with like Ryoma on Azir as the main carry focus, live bet Dignitas. Get out.
All right. I do want to pose 2 questions to you guys. Let's say 100 Thieves goes down 0-2 to Dignitas. Will we see a change to Damonte? Do you think he'd be subbed in?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I feel like that would be admitting that the entire experiment was a failure, and that doesn't feel like something they're willing to do right now.
That would mean that Damonte was taking reps in their scrimmages, and I don't think that they would use the time that way.
Okay, I guess I have 3 questions now. If 100 Thieves do kind of get blown out here, maybe another 3-0 performance by Dig, do we see Damonte in the second half for summer?
I hope so.
Yeah,
I think he leaves. I think he leaves the team. I don't think that he would want to stay with 100 Thieves.
yeah. From my read on the situation, like just from what like a couple of shows I listened to have said from people close to Damonte, is that he's like pissed and not
understandably
invested anymore.
I think
in 100 Thieves or League of Legends as a whole.
100 Thieves, but he is like very close friends with the rest of the Golden Guardian squad. I know, so who knows.
If you were 100 Thieves last year, I know that they wanted to get bought out. I don't know if it was all five or 4 of them. I don't know if Haunter was ever in play to do that, because I think 100 Thieves was probably like, we don't want Haunter. We have someday. We don't need him. I wonder if the discussion ever happened where they were like, we don't want Damonte, but in order to get the rest of the team, it just makes sense financially for us to make this commitment for like 1 year, a part of a year, and like maybe they got some kind of good deal on it where it didn't really impact the numbers either way. I don't understand. Maybe because Golden Guardians basically sold off everyone because they didn't want to have to pay their players. So if Damonte had a big salary, maybe they're like, listen, you take these other 3 players, you give us partial buyouts for them. We'll throw in Damonte for free. We don't want him on the books because we would have to pay him too much money. Maybe that's what the situation was. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this could be a like potential nemesis spot or something like that. Especially with
a bad mid laner doesn't get to play League of Legends anymore.
Yeah, I could see like them going to another failed mid laner next year.
I can't wait. Honestly, there have been rumors about like Nemesis coming to the LCS. Nothing would make me happier than Nemesis coming to the LCS and just being trash. That would be so incredible. He was so bad on Fnatic. I don't know why people liked him.
I agree.
All right. Let's see, did I have any more? No, I guess not. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we get out of here?
We got one more LEC game, right?
Nope. That was the last of the games.
Right? I don't think we do. I think you're just crazy.
There's a Sunday LEC game, I swear to God.
That's Rogue versus Mad Lions.
Well, that was the best end to a podcast of all time.
And that's why we call it a COD pass. Yeah.
One of the best. All right, for the free one, I want to thank everyone again for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, which why wouldn't you, be sure to like and subscribe the video and to the Esports Department YouTube channel. I want to thank Michael and Alan for joining me tonight. You can follow Michael at League of Items on Twitter and Alan at LCS Picks. You can find myself at XGhostWriter90 on Twitter. Hit us up if you enjoyed the show. Also have an offer for all the free listeners. If you aren't already subbed to the esportsdepartment.com, you can get 10% off subscription using the code IEDGE. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, League of Legends is almost over. But if you get a 1-month subscription, get that 10% off. This is going to guarantee you all the way through playoffs, LPL, LCK, and the rest we have for mid-season showdown in the LEC. Sounds like a pretty good deal. Plus, you get the projections for CSGO and the betting picks from Gelati. Good luck on the slate, everybody, and let's go make some money.
See ya.